what do you think the effect of Lockhart's admission will have on the NFL?
I think that moving forward, they'll definitely think things a little bit differently. I think if the Colin Kaepernick situation were to happen right now, as opposed to back in 2016, you'd see an entirely different result because you have to take into account what Joe Lockhart said. And he was in the communications department with the NFL at that particular moment in time. He would know. Listen to what he said, and this is the key sentence. He said the owners, one owner had projected and had told them that they would lose 20% of their season ticket holders if they were to sign on Colin Kaepernick. Now, as Max Kellerman has pointed out on numerous occasions, that was foolhardy thinking. That wasn't necessarily accurate. We see the millions upon millions of people who support Colin Kaepernick because, as I've said in the past, any black person you can't be opposed to his kneeling because of the reasons behind it. Racial oppression, racial inequality, police brutality. There isn't a black man alive that should have a problem with that. Shouldn't have had a problem with it in 2016, shouldn't have a problem with it now. I never spoke against that. My argument against Colin Kaepernick is, okay, a year later, after you have done that, now what's your plan? Because you still wanted to be an NFL quarterback. How are we going to go about making that happen? Which is why yesterday, Ryan, I was on the air and I made sure to point out the distinction between the league office and NFL owners, because I think it's inherently unfair to castigate Roger Goodell, Commissioner Roger Goodell, when this man is behind the scenes trying to prod and push, as Joe Lockhart pointed out, prod and push owners, somebody to sign Colin Kaepernick, okay? So clearly it wasn't the league that was doing it. Jay-Z and Rock Nation working in concert with Roger Goodell. They were trying to do that. The owners themselves are the villains in this because they didn't want to make that happen. But in the end, what it comes down to is that if this were happening now, because of the times that we're living in and how this is really crystallized and illuminated in so many people's mind that you've got even white folks out there marching and protesting with black folks about Black Lives Matter, about police brutality or brutality on the part of some police officers, all of this other stuff that's going on. You've got white and black folks in the mix now, and I think it would be handled differently. At that particular moment in time, it was primarily just black folks speaking up for Colin Kaepernick. You had white billionaires owning NFL teams that had deduced he was bad for business. That was the reason that they made the decisions that they made. It's nice to hear somebody admit it, but it shouldn't be something that we're surprised by, nor should it be something that we didn't know, because I don't give a damn what business you're in. If you are perceived as being somebody who is negatively going to affect somebody's bottom line, they're going to make sure to negatively affect you. That's what's going on, and that's really what we learned from Lockhart, that it was official, how stupid they were.
I don't know how scientific of a process it was that the owners deduced that their bottom line would be hurt any more than it was hurt by not supporting Kaepernick. And Lockhart, who was, if he's being honest about what's going on, and he is credible, then Goodell was trying to do the right thing, and he didn't have the power or the will of even a single owner. Now, why not? Why didn't he? Well, let's look at the ethnic and racial composition of the owners. And I'll start by saying, even with tech disruption and all this stuff in recent years and more progressive kind of billionaires, to be a billionaire, I think, usually means that the person, or suggests, the person may have conservative bent, because what is conservative really? Maintaining the status quo. Well, the status quo is doing really well for the billionaires. So, of course, I would expect to find a lot of conservative owners politically. Okay, I understand that. And so they may be of whatever race or ethnic background, more sympathetic or less sympathetic to Kaepernick, maybe, who wants to upend the status quo in certain ways, than other kinds of people might be. I get that as a premise. Let me just get that out of the way. Now let's look at the composition of NFL owners, who all resisted Goodell's plea, if Lockhart's to be believed, and I believe him. 30 white, 1 Pakistani American, owner of the Jaguars, 1 Asian American, Korean American, who together with her husband owned the Buffalo Bills, but who was raised here, adopted and raised here. Why do I bring that up? Because when we talk about diversity in the NFL among ownership, we're not simply meaning capital D diversity. It's important to reflect the ethnic composition of the United States, or not just to have like a monolith, white owners reflecting a certain mentality. But the league is, let's not mince words, largely African American. And that is a group that is completely without representation on the ownership level. That is not to say that an African American billionaire will necessarily not also say, look, he's affecting our bottom line. Although, again, I don't know. Would he really have affected the bottom line? The multiracial coalition of the goodwill is the majority in this country. The minority is the white monolith that elected certain national officials federally. That's the minority in the country. So and even if football fans, you sure that would have been bad? Because there was some backlash economically for the NFL for not supporting Kaepernick. Nevertheless, they chose that course because these are their own personal leanings as well. It's the lens through which they see the world. And until at the ownership level, that club is broken up a bit and other points of view are reflected, this does not surprise me. And finally, I'll say again, I need to bring home this point whenever the subject comes up. Kaepernick was specifically protesting the interactions between communities of color and law enforcement, right? Police brutality. Okay, and that's a significant issue. But it is one issue that represents, in certain ways, systemic racism, which is a huge issue going back to our country's original sin, slavery, through Jim Crow and Reconstruction and civil rights. That is the much larger issue. And why is it really that there's no African American ownership? Well, besides everything else, there's an economic reverberation still taking place that is affecting the bottom line literally for African Americans. On top of that, there's an old boys network in the NFL. There needs to be black ownership.